Hello everyone, welcome back to the Generative AI podcast series from Happiest Minds. I'm Pragya Sugandha and I lead the marketing for Generative AI Business Services. Today we have Naveen MR with us. Naveen is the head of technologies at the Generative AI Services at Happiest Minds, and he's a veteran with 20 plus years of experience in the industry. So Naveen, Generative AI has been making a lot of waves in the industry. So tell us, what techniques do you use to optimize the performance and efficiency of your Generative AI models?
So there are two aspects to it, right? So one is the generative AI model itself. How do you actually optimize the model from a performance perspective? And not just performance, right? So it could be accuracy, how from a bias perspective, how is it performing? And then you have the usage of the model, where how do you optimize from a usage perspective? How do I improve the latency? How do you improve the accuracy? So the industry has multiple options, right? So one is when you take a model, then one of the things that people will do is to downsize the model. You have a large language model, then you do a downsizing of the model, but ensuring that we don't lose out on the performance of the model, right? So that is one of the techniques. And from a usage perspective, what we do is typically we look at ways in which we can optimize the model's performance by introducing caching, by deploying the model on a local hardware. There are ways in which you can actually optimize the performance of the model from a usage perspective. So it depends on what you're trying to do and where you're trying to fit your model.
There have been so many concerns regarding the ethical use of generative AI. So how do you ensure the ethical use of generative AI in your projects?
This is a very big subject in the industry, right? So how do you ensure that your models are not biased? How do you ensure the privacy of data is secured? So for each of these problem areas, there are multiple ways in which you can actually tackle the problem. We have collaboration with a partner where we have a partner called Privacy API that acts as a gatekeeper. Anything that goes out of your purview, any information that we send to the model, this tool does a gate check and ensures that all PII information is obfuscated. And then sent out, and then when it gets back, then it gives out with the information. So that is one way in which we actually handle PII information. From a bias perspective, one of the best things that we do is we look at the model that we're choosing. When every model today publishes the training data that it's been trained on. So we actually look at the training data that's trained on to ensure that there's enough diversity in the model, and there's not. So once we start using the model, and then when we start using the model, we also do a lot of testing on the model. We intentionally nudge the model to give a biased answer, and when we test it, and as far as it doesn't give a biased answer, then we know, okay, there's no bias in the output, right? So we do employ multiple technologies or multiple methods to ensure that the information of the enterprise is kept sacrosanct and not compromised with.
You spoke about the biases and how you handle it. So tell me more about the strategies that you employ to mitigate biases in generative AI models.
So again, there are two things there. When the model is being trained, the training data set itself needs to be diverse enough, right? So if you are training a model, the first thing we do is to ensure that the training data set is diverse enough, there is no bias in the data. And then when we are doing, and then the engineer, the AI engineer who's actually training the model, we also teach them how not to be biased when they are tagging or labeling the answers. So that's the first aspect of it. How do you ensure that the model and the training data itself on which the model is trained is unbiased? The second aspect of it is, like I was telling earlier, every model today publishes the data set that it's been trained on. So one of the key things that we do when we start a project or when we try to select a model is go through this publications that they have to ensure that, okay, what is the diversity of the data that it's been trained on, and then pick up a model, again case to case basis, right? So pick up a model that ensures there's enough diversity and then there's no bias in the model.
So Naveen, can you discuss a project where you have successfully integrated generative AI with other technologies?
I can think of two instances, right? So one is what we have done for a large airline technology provider where we've actually integrated generative AI within ServiceNow. So while the latest versions of ServiceNow does have generative AI capabilities within it, but for customers who are on previous versions of ServiceNow, how do we enable those instances to be generative AI aware, right? So what we've done is we have a solution in place where we actually integrate generative AI as part of the ServiceNow incident creation screens, where the agents can then quickly get answers to these questions to the issues at our hand. So that is one aspect of it. We're also working for another customer where we're actually integrating or bringing in generative AI in the overall automation process. So this is for a APAR, accounts receivables and account payables automation, where we're actually working, putting solutions together with Power Automate and Generative AI of taking the whole automation cycle and introducing generative within it.
And in the end, tell me, what do you see as the future generative AI, and especially with regards to different industries?
There are some laggards. When I say laggards, it's not intentionally, but it's more to do with the apprehensions around the privacy of data. So some of the more conservative industries, when it comes to, when I say conservative, it means industries that are more conservative with respect to data, are more finicky about the data, like the BFSI vertical. So there are apprehensions to move ahead at the same pace where some other industries are moving ahead. On the other side of the spectrum, you have retail customers who are embracing it pretty heavily, because a lot of features of generative AI is giving them the power to innovate much faster. And there are also apprehensions there about the IP of the information that's been generated. But there at least we see a lot more movement when it comes to the retail segment. But where we are seeing more traction is, at least at this point in time, where we are seeing more traction is within the enterprise. People are more willing to start their generative AI with use cases that directly impact within the enterprise, employees of them within the enterprise. And then once they are confident about it, we are seeing people slowly exposing generative AI to the external customers.
Thank you so much, Naveen, for sharing all your insights with us. I think some of it has helped us understand generative AI better, and it will help our end customer also understand how we are implementing generative AI in our projects. Thank you so much.